Our guest today is Andrew Challenger, Senior Vice President of the outplacement and executive coaching firm Challenger, Gray and Christmas in Chicago. With unemployment apparently still continuing, 13.5 million people in the latest figures from the Department of Labor, essentially for most of the month of June, but also some of May. What does that tell you? Are we ever going to get out of pandemic unemployment, or is this something that's going to go on and on and on?
Yeah, look, despite the fact that we've seen a couple of good reports as of late in terms of the bounce back in jobs from the very great depths of the pandemic joblessness that we saw in the first couple months as COVID-19 spread across the country, we are certainly continuing to see in certain areas of the economy continued job cuts. We have seen a return of some jobs in retail establishments and at restaurants, as some of those areas most severely affected by the coronavirus. But as the pandemic has continued and as the economy has slipped into an official recession, there are many more sectors of the economy that we're starting to see job cuts announced and pile up.
As we are recording this, it's just a few minutes after the state of California released its unemployment figures for the month of June stopping on June 12th, I guess going back 30 days, and it shows the unemployment rate did drop to just under 15%. But are you saying we shouldn't be too optimistic about that?
Yeah, I think despite a couple positive signals that we've seen, there's some real worry that the job cuts are continuing to come. They're just moving sectors in some way. Right? We're seeing some of those in-person jobs have come back as businesses have reopened, but many more cuts are coming from kind of white-collar jobs that had been safe from the brunt of the crisis because they were able to be done from home, are now on the chopping block because companies are facing a real decrease in demand across the board. While consumer spending has been up in certain areas, consumer preferences have really changed and some industries are being hit hard.
So we are seeing fewer people, obviously, going to department stores, and department stores were kind of hemorrhaging jobs to begin with. What do you guys see from your catbird seat when it comes to that type of retail establishment?
Yeah, retail is a continuing story of a movement from brick and mortar retail to e-commerce, right? This was a long-term trend that has been moving over the course of the last 4 years. Retail has been the sector of the economy where we've continuously seen the most job cuts as companies transition from those in-person transactions to online sales. This crisis has accelerated that tenfold, right? As businesses that shuttered because of the coronavirus very well may never reopen their storefronts. Companies that were able to make that transition to e-commerce have really seen a big boom in their demand and are hiring at a quick pace. So it's an interesting shifting of the industry.
Another industry that you did research on very recently is that of the news business, not just journalism. And I think Americans would agree that journalism is more important than ever these days. But the news business has to come up with a new business model. What do you see for the future?
Yeah, there's been seismic shifts within the news industry, the way people consume news, the way it's delivered and reported. And because of that, there has been a real spike in job cuts announced in the newsroom. We saw job cuts spike about 170% this year as compared to the same period last year. It's a particularly tough time to be in the news industry, I believe.
Is it going to move to online, or is that just too little of a revenue stream to sustain what we've had?
Yeah, the business model of online news is running into a lot of challenges where a handful of companies like Facebook and Google control a major segment of online advertising sales. And so, as newspapers have moved online, as various forms of media have moved to the internet, they are now competing with some real behemoths in terms of the total ad revenue that's being spent by companies. And so it's a, a, a difficulty that subscription fees will not be able to overcome. And so we might see continued concentration within the industry.
On Friday, your company came out with a new report that might give some people a bit of optimism, and that is the number of females in the top jobs in companies, the CEOs, seems to be on the increase. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, right. Overall, women are still poorly represented at the very top of organizations, and it's a change that has a long way to go. But I think when we look over the past decade, there's been some really positive news in the fact that women are gaining higher roles. The percentage of new CEO positions that are transitioning from men to women, and women, going to other women, is a positive signal that there is a diversity of gender at the top of organizations that we know provides real value to companies and shareholders.
Andy, as always, you have been very generous with a lot of excellent observations and information. But what would you like to add we haven't talked about?
I think overall, anybody that's job seeking should just remember that right now there are jobs still coming online. They may not be in the industry where you've practiced for a long period of time. It might not be the industry you hope to be 10 years from now, but there are certain segments of the economy where jobs are still being brought online. And if you can find those positions, you can always navigate your way back to your dream career and your dream position. It's important to try to find employment in the interim. It really helps in the long run.